The impact of the global supply chain disruption is being felt across the world, from a massive chip shortage to the shops and restaurants. Delayed deliveries of your favorite electronics, all this is now threatening to dampen the festive spirits. Welcome to WION World is One. My name is Priyanka Sharma. Today on our weekly broadcast of the WION VOA Co-Production, we look at the impact of these supply chain bottlenecks and other big stories coming from America. Let's now start with the supply chain crisis. China is the center of manufacturing for the world, so when COVID-19 hit, manufacturing was naturally disrupted. Production delays gave way to shipping delays. And now it's difficult and sometimes nearly impossible to get certain items to your doorstep. VOA's Carolyn Prasuti takes a look at what's missing.
Lunch is on at the Green Pig Bistro. It could shape up to be the busiest Saturday in the Virginia restaurant's 10-year history. Customers are back. But beyond the dishes, other things are missing for head chef Tracy O'Grady. An induction burner.
We've been waiting for the part for 2.5 months.
And 4 months for a wine cooler.
It could be on a boat. It could still be in the factory. It could be at a port. It could be on a semi.
COVID-19 has created a major delay in products from China. Also, bottlenecks at American ports have forced dozens of container ships to sit offshore. With no workers to unload and no available warehouse space, there is no path to get products to consumers. It seems most Americans are waiting for something.
Our building has an HVAC system that needs repair, and we've been waiting 2 weeks for the parts. And they're still not here. Same thing with the hot tub on the rooftop building.
These moms worry about Christmas gifts.
I've been trying to get the PS5 for over a year, and there's like blogs that are like where you can find it, and they like come up and say it's available, and by the time you go to the site, they're all gone.
Add to that bicycles, cars, sneakers, and electronics.
Screens, tablets, computers.
James Sampson owns a chain of wireless RXX stores in the Washington, D.C. area. Almost all his components are shipped from China. What used to take 3 to 5 days now takes up to 8 weeks.
It's affecting our end customer. It's affecting the pricing that we have to give to customers because shipping prices are going up. And it's affecting the time we can actually complete repairs.
As a small business owner, Sampson says he can't compete with the huge national chains that are now contracting their own container ships.
It's going to have some long-term effects on us, without a doubt.
Well, good afternoon, everyone.
President Joe Biden says California ports have agreed to operate around the clock, including weekends, to clear out the logjam. Beyond that, he says the U.S. needs to invest in the U.S.
Never again should our country and our economy be unable to make critical products we need because we don't have access to materials to make that product.
Chef O'Grady agrees, but for now, she has to rely on the global economy.
I'm not certain that it affects our bottom line, but it certainly affects our stress level. And it takes me away from things that I really need to be doing.
Like whipping up dishes, not chasing down missing equipment. Carolyn Prasuti, VOA News, Arlington, Virginia.
To speak about this further, we're now joined by Voice of America correspondent Chris Casquejo from Washington. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. Now, rising demand worldwide has indeed put pressure on global supply chains, but some also point to the continued trade dispute between the U.S. and China. Are there any signs now of a thaw in the U.S.-China relationship as far as trade is concerned?
Good morning from Washington, Priyanka. The White House said earlier this month a virtual summit between President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping is being planned for later this year. And in a sign the trade dispute might be thawing, U.S. Trade Representative Katherine Tai said recently that the U.S. would start cutting back tariffs on certain Chinese products. So far, the Biden administration has kept in place tariffs on $350 billion worth of Chinese goods. That began under the Trump administration. We've heard from analysts that reducing these tariffs would jumpstart the manufacturing of goods. Apple is just one well-known brand that has grappled with rising costs during the trade dispute. It gets parts from companies in China, Japan, and South Korea. All of this is strengthening the case for moving production away from China so that companies aren't relying on just one country.
Right. Now, Chris, let's move on to China's latest military moves. This week, we learned that China may have tested a hypersonic missile earlier this summer, and it continues to fly military jets over Taiwan's air defense base. So how is the U.S. countering these actions?
Well, the increase in Chinese military activity is part of the reason why President Biden is pushing for a meeting with Chinese President Xi before the end of this year. The U.S. has also taken steps to arm Australia with nuclear-powered submarines, a move that will help Southeast Asian nations counter Beijing's territorial claims in the East and South China Seas. Perhaps most importantly, the U.S. is working more closely with India to lead naval exercises and other military cooperation efforts in the region. Washington clearly considers India as a leading strategic partner in the region, along with Australia and Japan. It's worth noting, though, that India shares a border with China, so its concerns are much more immediate and complex. President Biden's pick for ambassador to China appeared this week before lawmakers considering his nomination. Nicholas Burns said that Americans should have confidence in our strength when dealing with the rise of China. That post, when it's filled, would be an important figure in shaping U.S.-China relations.
Right, Chris, thanks so much for all these inputs. Stay with us on this broadcast. We'll come back to you for more inputs on another stories coming from the United States. Now, the approval of the U.S. leadership around the world rebounded during the first 6 months of President Joe Biden's term after a record low in the last year of President Donald Trump's administration. This, according to a new Gallup survey of people in nearly 50 countries. White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara has this next report. Have a look.
While he has been plagued by low approval ratings at home in recent weeks, some good news on the global stage for U.S. President Joe Biden. According to a new Gallup report, approval of U.S. leadership has increased from 30% in 2020 to 49% as of August 2021 across 46 countries and territories. The jump is partly driven by the administration's re-engagement with the world.
Even in the first few hours and moments of the Biden administration, Biden was rejoining the Paris Agreement and also stepping back from Trump's decision to withdraw from the World Health Organization. So I think that those olive branches were really promising signs that a lot of allies were looking for.
The 49% approval rating matched the record high during President Barack Obama's first year in office in 2009. The record low, 30%, was under President Donald Trump and was likely due to his foreign policy approach.
We are truly and finally putting America first.
The Gallup report suggests Biden's messaging to the world is getting a more favorable response.
America is back. America is back. Diplomacy is back.
But the messy withdrawal from Afghanistan and the September AUKUS agreement to provide Australia with nuclear-powered submarines, canceling a prior deal with France, were deeply criticized even by U.S. allies.
They feel like they were fed a line. Oh, this is an administration that is going to rejuvenate our alliances. We care about NATO. We care about other people. We care about human rights. And then what's happened? We haven't put our money where our mouth is when it comes to Afghanistan, when it comes to the AUKUS deal with Australia, and that's really caused problems.
Despite the improvement, the U.S. is behind Germany, a country that ranked first among respondents, particularly in Europe, Asia, and the Americas. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News.
We still have Voice of America's correspondent Chris Casquejo from Washington with us on this special broadcast. Chris, now it's clear that the U.S. is focused once again on rebuilding strategic alliances under President Biden. But how would you characterize the shift in U.S. foreign policy as of now?
The U.S. is certainly shifting its energy and resources to countering China now that the costly military effort in Afghanistan has ended. This week, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken made his first trip to South America, where China's infrastructure investments continue to grow. He said the Biden administration realizes that in the past, the U.S. has focused too much on promoting democracy and security in the region and not enough on boosting the economy. But experts say China has taken an opposite approach in the region it's selling the Vietnamese model to South American nations, swapping trade with China and more infrastructure for a strong economy without much concern at all for democracy. For example, China began investing in Chile just 5 years ago, and now China is Chile's top trading partner.
Right. Now, Chris, my final question for you. A significant figure in the U.S. and world politics passed away this week from COVID-19, former U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell. How will his legacy continue to shape U.S. foreign policy moving forward?
Priyanka, despite spending much of his career rising to the military's top ranks, General Powell had a limited view of the use of military power. His so-called Powell Doctrine basically said that U.S. military force should only be used when conflict could easily be won and where there was a defined exit strategy. Polls are now showing us that the American people agree after 20 years in Afghanistan and Iraq. They're tired of war. So we're already seeing a shift toward the Powell Doctrine in the way President Biden is governing. He recently declared a new era of relentless diplomacy instead of relentless war at last month's UN General Assembly meeting. And going forward, we can expect to see far less nation building and far more work on strengthening alliances. As I mentioned earlier, that's certainly the case with the Quad Alliance of India, Japan, Australia, and the United States. It's a shift in focus toward dealing with the threats of the future rather than the conflicts of the past. Priyanka?
Right. Chris Casquejo, thank you so much for all those inputs, and thank you for joining us from Washington on WION.